Jacob, have you seen what a GameStop stock has been doing?
No, I've heard that it's been kind of moving up a little bit.
Yeah, it's it's at a pretty nice run up. It actually pumped from roughly, it was about $19 on January 12th, and now it's sitting at 65.
Wow.
It actually touched a high of 70. And I don't know about you, but GameStop is pretty much a dying brand at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's the blockbuster of our time. It's weird to see that trying to come back like that.
Yeah. Well, more or less, it wasn't really anything fundamental. They did change up some management, which was which was a good thing. It's what people wanted. But what really kicked it off was more or less a short squeeze, where there was a lot of open interest for the max amount of calls that were being sold, and for these call sellers, people who are selling stock options, actually had to buy shares to make their delta equal to what the delta is of the calls that they just sold. So it's to help them not lose as much money pretty much. So there was this weird infinite feedback loop, you could say, this kind of past month, more or less, that's led us up to where GameStop is up now.
I see.
And I saw actually on Reddit, because GameStop really was kind of put onto the scene by the Wall Street Bets, Reddit. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have a bunch of roughly 2 million people there. And they've been talking about it a lot recently, and so when they were talking about GME, GameStop, a lot of people ended up buying, and they kind of helped create this. And right now they're under some fire, possibly, by the SEC. A lot of the boomers were kind of pissed off because there was a company called Citron Research who actually was trying to short GameStop, and they were calling everyone fools for it. And their Twitter ended up getting hacked. They got a shit ton of hate for it. And they have pretty much lost millions of dollars on attempting to short GameStop, betting that the stock would go down.
Right.
They've lost a lot of money.
So they're going after the Wall Street Bets subreddit? How are you going to do that?
There's rumors that they're going to try to, that they eventually will, because they're trying to say that the Wall Street Bets Reddit pretty much pumps stocks. They're trying to say, because that's not allowed. You're not allowed to pump stocks with a massive group. But the issue is that, with all these eyes on Wall Street Bets currently, I mean, it's not an organized effort. It's all, content there is from individuals. It's created by its users. And they're not telling people, what to buy.
Yeah, that's right. Someone just will do something weird or stupid, and then other people will follow.
Yeah. And so they're trying to say that this subreddit is under some legal troubles for, pumping the shit out of a stock, even though, in theory, you could say that they have, but there's definitely a major turnaround for GameStop stock, and now it's touching, almost all-time highs from this.
Well, I highly doubt Reddit's going to be like, oh, yeah, this is who these people are. Plus, I don't even...
And you could say that they played a massive role in this.
The thing about trying to go after people on a site like Reddit, it's kind of like trying to go after people on 4chan. I'm pretty sure the only links you're going to have to these people are their email. And if they didn't use a very standard email, you're probably going to have a hard time finding these people, realistically.
Yeah, I don't think there will be any troubles, but there's definitely... They've been talking about, guys, just be careful. You never know. But one of my favorite things is to see all the massive, gains posts that people have been putting from GameStop. Have you seen, it was the user Deep Effing Value?
No, I haven't checked out that subreddit in a hot minute.
Yeah, he actually YOLO'd his entire portfolio into long-term call options on GameStop, actually. And roughly in July 2020, the value of his investment was roughly $50,000. And now it's worth $11 million.
Oh my god.
It's absolutely insane. It's crazy. I think he started originally with a $146,000 investment before July, and then that dropped in value to about $40,000. And in July, the value, actually no, the value of all of his investments in July was actually about $26,000, and now he's a millionaire, a multi-millionaire.
Wow.
By buying calls on a dying company.
That's really stupid.
It's absolutely insane. I find it, I find it amazing. I do. The fact that an individual is able to turn a, extremely risky investment and turn his life around for the ultimate better and become a millionaire. I mean, it's not impossible to be a millionaire by trading, but it definitely takes some guts, and it takes some iron hands. Dude, if I originally saw that my position was down 50% and it still had, 6 months or so to go, I would have cut it, especially on GameStop.
Yeah, that's how he was willing to hold in that long is crazy. I can't think about doing that.
And it's funny too, because in his original post talking about the GameStop YOLO in July, it had only like a 173 like upvotes, which is the equivalent of a like, and it was downvoted as well a bunch. And people in the comments were just bullying him, calling him stupid, saying he was throwing away his money. And now here just on Friday, multi-millionaire, everyone else is trying to hop on the train. I mean,
it's too late.
It's kind of
too late now.
Yeah, but I mean, this guy, he wasn't the only one that actually had like a long-term position on GameStop, which I thought was interesting, because Michael Burry actually has quite a big position. You know who Michael Burry is?
Should I?
You know who Michael Burry is?
Not by name.
So you remember the guy like in the movie The Big Short? You ever seen The Big Short?
Maybe.
Well, he was the guy who essentially predicted the 2007-2008 housing market crash, and was actually one of the guys to like short the market and make millions and millions of dollars. And he has actually been long on a GameStop for quite a while, actually. I believe he had millions of shares, roughly, I'd say probably around 3.5 or so, and he's been long for a long time. He owns roughly 3 million shares of it. So he's made quite a bit of bank off of that.
Yeah, I see his net worth. According to Wikipedia, whenever it was last updated, it was 200 to 300 million.
It's just hard for me to believe right now. I'm trying to find a lot of value investments in things like solar companies, because I think, in the year of during the years of this Biden administration, we're going to see a lot of push for renewable. We already have. And I thought that was going to, pay well, and it is so far. It's a long-term position. But I never would have thought that GameStop, out of all things, would have had a absolutely massive pump from essentially the internet. You could almost say that the internet as a whole kind of rallied all these people into getting a sort of weird like feedback loop where the stock just goes up because of calls they bought.
Yeah, that's
they forced market makers
situation.
The people. Yeah, they essentially forced market makers, the people who are selling these options, to buy shares, so they would essentially break even when they sold those.
That's really funny.
It is extremely funny. I imagine that this sort of like style of investing is really just boomers versus zoomers. I mean, there's a lot of zoomers trading, there's a lot of realtor investors, people at home trading. It's it's hilarious. And when they're pumping these, dying, what in my mind is a dying brand, as GameStop, which is an awful value investment, is outperforming, these index funds and mutual funds and these quote-unquote value investments that boomers have spent, hundreds of hours researching into.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's been pretty exciting. That's really all the exciting things that I've had to report on this week. I've just been doing a lot of trading and doing homework, really. And I think I may have found the next stock that may have a short squeeze, but we'll see how that plays out. What's going on in your world? Enlighten me.
Not much. Just more school and homework. Actually, one of my classes I've gotten into right now, I didn't realize it was going to be as bad as it is. I was looking through the course website, and I was like, oh, it's going to be one of these classes, because all he had on the website was basically just a bunch of, like, midterm exams. I was like, oh, okay. So it's going to be one of these classes. And then I was talking to one of my friends, and he was like, have you seen the homework for building blocks? And I was like, what are you talking about? What homework? I just checked the course website yesterday. There's nothing besides midterms. He's like, no, he just put one in there today. It's due in like 5 days. And I took a look at it, and it's terrifying. It's and building blocks of computer science. It used to be called discrete math. So it's like math and how it relates to computer science. And some of this stuff it's crazy. So I'm going to have to find a mentor or somebody to dumb it down for me, because I'm smooth brain and need a little bit of help.
Yeah, what do you have to do on this assignment?
It's just a bunch of math. That's all it is. It's a bunch of like weird math that I'm not really used to.
Very nice.
Speaking of computers and computer science, have you heard that Google is threatening to shut down the search engine in Australia?
I did not.
Yes. Apparently it's the result of the Australian government trying to... It has to do with like their news. France has done something similar to what Australia's trying to do a while back, and Google lost that, and they have to like pay... They have to pay like these French news sites for showing snippets of the news, like when you search it, and like, you know how like when you type into Google you search like something news and it'll show like a snippet of a news article.
Yeah.
So Google now has to pay those news sites, which, you know what, fair enough. That's fair. But Australia is wanting to make it pay for links and snippets. So just for having a link to that article, they want Google to pay for that, because they're linking to the article on their website.
Okay.
A lot of people are kind of up in arms about it, specifically Google, but they've made the argument that it's not really a good idea, and that it kind of breaks, or would break, how the internet works, because the internet, you need links to go around the internet, and so if you're having to have Google pay out to host this link to someone's news website, it just kind of changes things. It's not really the norm. Google would have to probably change something, hike their prices on their products or something, start serving more ads, more like, probably everywhere, to try to make up for the loss that they're going to take for these links.
Yeah, that's I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
I do not.
Something it says in a statement to the Senate Economics Committee today, its VP for Australia and New Zealand, Mel Silva, said this provision in the code would set an untenable precedent for our business in the digital economy. It's not compatible with how search engines work or how the internet works, and this is not just Google's view. It has been cited in many of the submissions received by this inquiry. So it's not just Google that's fighting this. There's some other groups out there that think this isn't it's not a good thing to do. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, the internet really should be free if you're, clicking around on links and things like that. No one should really have to, pay someone else for clicking on a link, unless it's like a private server or things like that, where it's a premium thing. You have to pay a fee to get into like this, massive group or something like that.
Yeah. Funnily enough, Facebook would also be subject to this law. And I'm reading here, this is from TechCrunch, by the way, if you want to check out where I'm finding this news at, it's TechCrunch. It says Facebook would also be subject to the law, and Facebook has previously said it would ban news from being shared on its products, owing if the law was brought in. as well as claiming it's reduced its investment in the country as a result of the legislative threat. So they've, I guess, their investments in Australia have been slashed a little bit due to this.
Damn. Yeah, that's something I never really thought we'd see. Having to pay for clicking on links and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. The internet's kind of in a weird place right now, especially with a lot of social medias. I remember back, it was a few years ago. What was it? It was something to do with internet, like privacy.
Yeah, well, it's probably the net neutrality, which I was kind of young and didn't know a lot about it.
Yeah, it was that guy.
It's I've learned more about it.
Like
I've heard that a lot of people around here kind of pushed against it, but it actually, from what I've heard more recently, it would have been a better thing in trying to keep governments, like, it's, to my knowledge, and let me just kind of look this up, but to my knowledge, it's kind of to keep governments from just running the internet. Yeah.
And, oh boy, this is an interesting take, but you could almost, see that now. I mean, they shut down Parler.
Okay, I found it. So I was a little off. Network neutrality, most commonly called net neutrality, is the principle that internet service providers must treat all internet communications equally and not discriminate or charge differently based on user, content, website, platform, application, type of equipment, source address, destination address, or method of communication, which happens now. And I've heard that depending on what you're using, if you have an ISP that's not very, it's a little shady, I guess, or I say shady, but anti-consumer, they will throttle your internet connection depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. And that's only for charging, right?
Yes. So with net neutrality, ISPs may not intentionally block, slow down, or charge money for specific online content. I've heard stories where they will throttle your internet if you're, I think streaming is one of the things that sometimes they will do, among some other things, will just kind of like them dictating what you can and can't do on the internet simply because they're serving the internet to you. Like, how dare you use their service for, your own benefit.
Yeah. I know, recently, I mean, the government has absolutely been getting involved in in the internet and what people have access to. We did see the eventual shutdown of Parler for a bit, and then they brought it back. And there's also, as well, you could say that the banning of Donald Trump off of every platform, or pretty much every social media platform, is also kind of a form of suppression of speech. But there was definitely some interesting reasons on why they did that. I remember we did a sort of short dive into the recent impeachment trials in my business class, because we're kind of talking about the legal side of it. And there was some key words in there that he said that could be determined as inciting like an insurrection, trying to get people kind of riled up. Did you ever read those string of tweets?
No, I didn't, but I've listened to some commentary by some people who have talked about stuff like this in the past, not just by Donald Trump, but other issues where people have been like, oh, they incited this, and they have a pretty strict policy on what they determine as inciting violence, and their take was, no, it wasn't. He didn't specifically incite violence. Yes, what he said probably did help cause the violence and may indeed have caused the violence, but they don't believe that specifically in law that it should hold up, for the simple fact that he didn't specifically tell them to go and attack the Capitol. He didn't say that. He said words like, we got to fight this. Yeah. We got to do something. See you there. Stuff like that. Versus he didn't say, go attack the Capitol, which is usually what you would need to be like, oh, he incited this. He said to do this. But it's one of those things where do you take it as, oh, he was vague and this is probably what he meant and they did it? Or do you see oh, he said this and they took it as, oh, we should go attack the Capitol kind of thing?
Yeah, he definitely kind of hyped him up. He repeatedly kept telling him, this is all, stolen from me. We're not gonna give up. We're not gonna concede.
Well, he was
that we're not gonna
specifically
let them.
using language that, like I'm not gonna lie, he knew what he was doing. Like, we can't lie to ourselves and be like, oh, he didn't cause this, because sure, they might have done it anyway, but him saying what he did definitely didn't help. He was using language that was bound to get people riled up. This was stolen from us. It's our right. We have to go change this. We have to fix this. We can't allow this to happen. Well, what do you expect people to do when you say stuff like that? They're going to fight, obviously.
Yeah, you can't just tell your supporters that this, is blatantly stolen from us. We're not going to give, we're going to fight this. And, outside of it, I know his son talked, and he kind of got them riled up. He's throwing a few curse words, around, and people are like, yeah. And I do remember that the eventual call, whenever he was trying to, whenever it first started, they were wanting Trump to instantly come out and say, don't do this, but he kind of gave it a minute before he came out and said, go home, in peace, things like that.
Yeah, and I feel like if he had just said, but for the love of God, don't act violently, don't attack the Capitol or whatever, then maybe he could weasel his way out of this. But as much as I'd like to think that he wouldn't get charged in the court of law, I wouldn't be surprised if he does. It's kind of weird because it's kind of very clear that he basically incited it. But on the other hand, there's going to be instances very similar to this where maybe someone wasn't wanting to incite violence, but it could be construed that way. And so people do, and then it gets pinned on them when that wasn't their intention, kind of thing. I just feel like it could set a bad precedent. But I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it was just weird, man. I mean, his big thing, is, the election was stolen from me. I wanted a landslide and all these pieces of voter fraud. And his team did try to fight these claims of, voter fraud in the states where they lost. And they never had any substantial evidence to actually show that there was. So they ended up losing those. And so I'm sure it definitely hurt a lot of his followers when hearing like, oh, we lost this, but he's telling us, we didn't. This is a bunch of bullshit. And
yeah,
I'm glad that not a lot of people got hurt. There was a few people who did die, unfortunately, but there's not a lot you can do about that. And now we're in day, whatever day it is of.
Yeah, one thing that kind of made me mad is I've heard some people comparing the attack on the Capitol to other horrific incidents that have happened in American history. Like, I'm fairly certain I heard someone compare it to Pearl Harbor. And I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, I hate a lot of the equivalencies that people have been drawing recently about what it was. I mean, obviously you definitely can view it as a essentially a terrorist attack.
Like, yeah, why not? Sure. For all intents and purposes, yeah, domestic terror attack. Fine. I can accept that. That's fair. That's understandable. But don't compare it to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Times are definitely different now. A lot of people draw things to extremes nowadays. A lot of people overthink things.
I hear the word Nazi thrown around too much.
Yeah, we're losing. Or you could say we're losing vision on what the truth is for a lot of things. Obviously, the polarization of the media continues. It's not going to end anytime soon, and I hope that we have some sort of awakening and realize that this isn't Republican versus Democrat. This is, the idea of authoritarian versus the American people. Like, there's obviously two parties who dominate the United States, basically, and we're losing a middle ground of what it feels to actually be American, what it truly means. I mean, we kind of lost the sense of true patriotism and things like that in our democracy whenever we kind of had the Industrial Revolution, to where the idea of democratic participation was the American dream, but now it's keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah,
it's picking a side. It's being comfortable where you are instead of going.
Kind of equate what's happening to. It's almost like the lines are starting to be drawn so distinctly, and with words like, we may have talked about this in the previous podcast, but it's something that just bothers me. The people drawing lines of saying, if you're not with us, you're against us. It's one side or the other. Getting this good versus evil thing. It's being said on both sides. But to me, looking at it, not really aligning with either party, I'm seeing what's essentially becoming faction wars. Like, we've got these two different factions in America who are fighting. These elites, these people who have been in power and want to stay in power, and they will do anything they can to rile the people up beneath them to further their cause. It doesn't matter who or what they're aligning with. They'll grab anyone they can. They find who they think will identify with their agenda the most, or enough of it to jump on board, and then have them fight each other. It's like a giant game of chess where the voters are just pawns.
Yeah. One thing I actually saw really recently that surprised me was, did you see the recent Antifa riots in Portland, I believe it was?
No.
Yeah, it was in Portland. They actually, Antifa, they vandalized the Democratic Party office there. And they were vandalizing buildings.
Why?
Because they said, we don't want Biden, we want revenge.
Oh.
And that actually really surprised me. A lot of things that I believed that Antifa was have actually, proved to be completely wrong in my mind.
So it seems like Antifa is more of like an anarchist group than anything at this point.
It's still anti-fascist in the respect that they actually hate both parties. Because you can absolutely make an argument that both Biden and Trump run on a platform very authoritarian in their own style.
Yeah, but I have seen Biden making strides to try and connect with the American people. And I know Trump did that in his own way, trying to be for the small city folk. Biden, I heard him saying, I don't want to be a president for whatever he said, but he's basically saying, I want to be a president for all America. He's like, I'll do whatever for you, even if you don't like me, or basically that's the gist of it. I'm paraphrasing very heavily because I can't remember the exact words he said, but it basically to the tune of, I'm going to be here for you even if you don't want me, kind of thing, which I was like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah. I'd say I want to see some, reconnections of Americans, but we'll see. But they have a banner here. This is the banner that they led Antifa with at Portland. It said, we don't want Biden, we want revenge for police murders, imperialist wars, and fascist massacres. And already...
what? That's fair enough, but it's kind of the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, well, sometimes you just got to take action into your own hands. Obviously, I'd like to see things peacefully resolved, but we're already pushed so far, into these extremes where people are starting to take action. And it's a good thing to some extent.
We're not peacefully protesting because we're not heard when we peacefully protest, and that's why we do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's a very valid point.
It's a good thing to see people, to me, actually being passionate about their beliefs, but obviously not to this extent. I don't condone, burning down buildings and things, but I mean, sometimes if it gets the job done, it gets the job done.
Just it's I don't know. It's hard to draw a line there. It's like, sure, I'd like to see change. I think everyone would love to see change, but at the same time, hurting other people in the process isn't really the answer, especially if you're just going around torching everything, mom and pop stores, even government buildings. If there's people inside, that's still, you're endangering someone's life. They might not be for the agenda the government's pushing. Maybe they're just some poor office worker or secretary that's trying to do their job and make it by. But if you go and burn a building with someone inside, you are definitely responsible for their death.
Yeah, absolutely. But as I said earlier, I was just really surprised because really, more or less, a lot of people associated Antifa, anti-fascism, as being on the Democrat side, being on the liberal side. But now they're playing both fields, man. They're actually like fighting who they believe to be fascists, not just Republicans, because that was kind of the agenda, right? That's what we were told, is that they're anti-fascist and they hate Trump, so they're anti-Trump. But they're still anti-fascist, and they hate Biden.
Yeah, I didn't realize that they would hate Biden, but whatever. Yeah,
as I said, everything that I thought I knew about Antifa has been turned around, and I'm just... Well, I would say I'm impressed.
I had suspected, if you're like, oh, don't say that Antifa was in the government riots, and yeah, okay, I'm not saying that. Like, let me make this clear. I don't believe Antifa incited the riots there, but I believe they were doing something, because I heard that there was 2 pipe bombs found at a Democratic site and a Republican site. Now, who do you think would have done that other than maybe Antifa?
I definitely think it could have been an extremist from either side trying to get the people riled up. I mean, I like to think that there's a lot of factors that we don't understand. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes that we will never know about.
Yeah.
So it's ignorant to try and point the blame at one individual group when this could be anybody.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, to be fair, it could have been the Proud Boys or some other radical group at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, the Big Brother always works in the shadows. Right. There's definitely, it's the silent hand or the invisible hand over the nation. It kind of it moves everything together in the long run, how it's, it kind of works how it's supposed to, type of deal. So obviously there was a lot of tensions rising, and so when there's tensions rising, you're going to get a lot of people who can either find a way to benefit off of it somehow or use it as cover for their own agenda. So there's a lot of pieces moving. This isn't checkers, this is chess.
Yeah.
Times 10. But I'm interested to see how these next 4 years will go. There needs to be a lot of healing.
I'm hopeful.
I hope we find some middle ground somewhere.
Mend the broken bridges, the burned bridges that have happened in the recent years, and even more recently. I guess only time will tell if people are willing to try and extend the olive branch, or if it's just going to be more infighting.
Yeah, I think it can be done by a lot of people just simply turning off their TVs and talking to just real people, hearing real stories and getting to know their neighborhoods better and seeing what people need there and serving their communities, with some effort. Because, America really is, my idea of it is just kind of the society, you're in. It's the people around you. Everyone is born and raised in different conditions. No one's going to have, the right answer or just one answer. There's 101 ways to do something always, and people just need to get together in their communities and just better them, better their local areas. And then we can really find some, healing and common ground as Americans.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Jacob, anything you want to say to the listeners before we sign off?
Be diligent, honestly. Check. If you're watching the news, go check out look for sources yourself. Look for first-hand sources, second-hand, something besides Fox or CNN. Look elsewhere.
Yeah. I guess my little last bit I'm going to say is stay local. Talk to your neighbor. Make sure they're doing all right. Maybe they need help, shoveling snow or the sidewalk. Find some healing in your communities. Find a portion in your community that needs a bit of love. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Harrison's Happy Hour. We'll be back on Wednesday, and I hope you tune in to the next episode.